Welcome, everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the founder and chairman of DNA Behaviour International. And today I'm delighted to be with Brian Sulc, and we are going to discuss Brian's identity. And it will be, Brian, it will be a conversation, but I just want to welcome you today to this. And Brian, for our listeners, is the executive director and leads the training optimization initiative at the Department of Homeland Security. So he's got a very big role in leading training and across the Department of Homeland Security. So Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Hugh.
So Brian, just to get started for our listeners, why don't you tell me a little bit about your life and career background and how you got to this very important role at the Department of Homeland Security?
Sure. So I went to Cornell University and was in the ROTC program there, Navy ROTC. I was a Marine option. And so out of college, I was commissioned in the Marine Corps and became a infantry platoon commander to start my career. And I stayed in for 5 years in the infantry. For most of it, the last year, that was my first job in training. I became the deputy director of the instructional management program that was at Camp Pendleton in California. And then I went from the Marine Corps to law school. And it's interesting because I didn't necessarily have any kind of lifelong ambition to become an attorney, but I felt like I had squandered my education to some extent when I was at Cornell. It was paid for because I played football there and because I was in ROTC and had a scholarship, so 2 scholarships. And so I was at this good school, and because of football and ROTC, I was extremely busy, and never felt like I applied myself academically the way I wanted to. I've never felt like I got the full, I didn't fully embrace that experience from an academic standpoint, and felt later that I kind of had squandered it. And so I wanted to go to grad school, and I couldn't think of what kind of grad school I wanted to go to, but I knew law school was pretty well known for really challenge you at the intellectual level. And so I went to law school and went to George Mason Law School, and ended up enjoying the experience, doing well academically, and decided to be a prosecutor. And the reason I decided to be a prosecutor was because I really have always been moved and motivated by that kind of stark, distinction between good and evil. And I just wanted to be a good guy. I went to the Marine Corps so I could be a good guy. And I went to, and to fight bad guys. The combative element was an attraction too. I mean, I wrestled in high school. I played football in high school, both very kind of combative sports. I was a sparring partner for a professional fighter in boxing while I was in college. So at that age, really, attracted me. So becoming a prosecutor was just a natural extension of those sports, of my time in the Marine Corps as an infantry officer. And so I ended up prosecuting for about 6 years, really, really enjoyed it. And what happened was 9/11 happened, basically. And I had stayed in the reserves the entire time on the infantry side, and then I had some intelligence billets. So I kind of, in the reserves over the years, I kind of alternated between intelligence and infantry billets, and got qualified in intel, went to intel school. So 9/11 occurred, and I wanted in on it. As a matter of fact, I remember the day. I remember 9/11. I was a prosecutor in Arlington County, Virginia, where one of the planes hit the Pentagon. And I remember being on the 11th floor. I had a stack of files for preliminary hearings, just kind of, the daily drudgery. Not a big trial, just about 15 files, cops out in the hallway, defense attorneys, defendants, and then there was the courtroom. And then all of a sudden, I saw all the police officers sprinting out of the courtroom. And so I stood up. I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "The Pentagon's been bombed." And so I turned around, looked out the window, and saw this black flume of smoke in the horizon, which is where the Pentagon was. So within a day or two, I was dialing and smiling, trying to get back into the Marine Corps, to get activated with the Marine Corps, to get in on the effort post 9/11. And it took a while. It took about a year or so, but I got activated, and then ended up going to Iraq. So for the next 4 years, I was in the Marine Corps, and for around 3 years. And then when I did a tour in Iraq, saw, had quite intense experiences. And, at that point, when I came back, I decided Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security was standing up. And I saw it as a kind of I know it's federal government, but it was a stand-up, it was like getting in on the ground floor of a stand-up. And so even though there were things I hadn't accomplished as a prosecutor, I never did a murder case, for instance. I never had envisioned myself being a career attorney. And so I got in on the ground floor with Homeland Security after I deactivated from the Marine Corps. And that was in February '04. And other than getting activated once again in the Marine Corps as a battalion commander in '07, '08, the rest of my career has been in Homeland Security. And I've worked as a deputy director, and then as a director of the Border Security Division, which deals with counter drug, smuggling, issues like that. And I did that for quite a number of years. And then I had the opportunity before this job to help stand up the National Counterterrorism Center, which was a really interesting experience. That's out of University of Nebraska, Omaha. But we started it up from a vision to it actually exists now, and it's a think tank, so to speak, that's sponsored by DHS. And after that position, I was asked if I was willing to take on the training optimization initiative. So I had been in, intel operations most of my career, but this counterterrorism center of excellence, and then this position marked my return, so to speak, to training. And I don't know if I've ever really been good at anything technically. I've been proficient, but I don't know if I've ever been great at anything technically. It's always been more to me about the people and the opportunity for leadership and inspiring and leading others to succeed. There's been times in my career where I've almost felt insecure about some of my technical proficiencies in some of the positions. But I somehow have always managed to leverage the people around. And you do that, I think, and this is something I'm pretty passionate about. You do that by not caring who gets the credit. So if I feel improficient on something, instead of hiding it, seeking out people I trust, people I've engendered trust with, and not only, relying on them, but giving them all the credit. And when you do that, when you empower someone like that, and then you give them all the credit as well, I have found you really don't end up getting minimized as a leader, as I think some people might feel they would. You really just expand the organization's strength and the individual's strength by being upfront about where you're weak, relying on them, empowering them, and then celebrating their contributions and their success. So I think I'm probably surprisingly weak in areas that people don't know about, except people I've worked with closely. But somehow the organizations I've led have done pretty well over the years, whether it be, the Marine Corps or Homeland Security.
Wow. Brian, I am so in awe of your life and career, and also your honesty. And, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. And I think that's perhaps why you've been successful, because really there's so much depth there, in what you've done, the platform you've built. And a lot of that would inspire people. And I think, as you said, being vulnerable about yourself, admitting you're not perfect, allowing people to approach you, they're the big keys to leadership. But what I found interesting was, in the middle of your Marine Corps life or career, you became a prosecutor, an attorney, prosecuting people. But one of the things I think I was picking up in there was wanting to be the champion of the good guy, and use your combative traits, if you want to call it that, to knock the bad guys out of bed. That was something big that I heard, and was a sort of a connection between a lot of your career in the Marine Corps and law. Would I be right in that?
Oh, that's definitely a theme from early on. Yes, I like knowing. I like the mission being about going after the bad guy. It makes things very distinctive. It clarifies goals, and it makes it very easy to feel good about what you're doing. And
is that I imagine that's also part of your drive now in the intelligence area as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I went, in part, that's a huge part of why I went to the Department of Homeland Security, because it was post 9/11 and we were looking at some extreme challenges. So the logical transgression from the Marine Corps to prosecuting to Homeland Security, I have an Ivy League education. I have a law degree. I definitely have not chosen a route to profit from that financially is nearly as well as I might. But I really love having a clear mission that I feel is I really embrace the servant leadership approach. I've coached American football, and I've coached wrestling, and actually am coaching football now. I really push that and preach that to the players, to the kids, about the most satisfying thing out of the game is not necessarily just what you do as an individual, but looking out for that guy on your left or your right, and how teams that aren't necessarily the most talented can really succeed when they take that approach. So I'm a big believer in that, and not am I just a big believer, that emotionally that really drives me and fires me up.
And how are you bringing this all into the training that you're leading at the moment, and optimizing, I suppose, the development of people inside the Department of Homeland Security, particularly in the intelligence area? So just sort of bringing these concepts together of championing the good guy, putting down the bad person, or knocking out evil, as you said before, helping people operate for the better of a team as opposed to an individual.
So, yeah, I think once I got into DHS and, border security, there was definitely an enemy we were going after. Now, on the training side, I probably derive less of that, kind of satisfaction. But what I do get is the satisfaction of knowing we can have a huge impact by the quality of training that we're doing. And even though I'm in a position where I'm not training people individually, I have trainers under me, and I have trainers of trainers under me. And the training optimization initiative is a pretty, at least for this level, is a pretty grand vision, in that when the Homeland Security came together, there was 22 plus agencies with disparate missions all brought together. And so it was kind of a spaghetti of agencies. And to this day, the agencies, whether it be Customs and Border Protection, or Secret Service, or Transportation Security Agency, or the Coast Guard, they, all the different agencies have their own cultures and their own history, and the impact that has on intelligence can be, obviously they have a long history of being proficient at what they do, but in how we integrate that information and share that information, and even talk the same talk, what we in the Office of Intelligence and Analysis consider strategic, someone from Customs and Border Protection, what they consider strategic may be what impacts their own funding and their own big operations, whereas what we consider strategic is more like what the President of the United States would consider strategic. So just even simple definitions of strategic intelligence are not necessarily always the same across the different agencies. So we've come together, we've gotten a lot better at integrating our operations and working and sharing information over the years. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of challenges. And so the Training Optimization Initiative envisions having similar curricula, similar career paths, similar interchangeable instructors, and even a common facility. Those are the 4 pillars. And get to the point where, a targeter or an analyst, they have a common lexicon, a common training experience, where it even helped, ideally we help the careers of the intelligence professionals as they can, change agencies that they work for. But what it would do in the bigger picture is it would integrate our ability to operate better, which was the entire vision of Homeland Security. That's why it was created. So
it's really bringing the 22 agencies together as one longer term. It might take 10 years to do it, but that's the goal culturally. Right.
If you start at the training, there's a lot of efforts to integrate that have nothing to do with the training. There's operations centers, there's IT solutions, but the training is a big one because you get them right when they start, and they're talking the same language ideally when they graduate, no matter where they're going, and then they come back possibly in mid-career and work as an analyst for Secret Service, even though they're from Transportation Security Agency.
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer in training, and even though I had a corporate career in the accounting world, I did a lot of, I led a lot of the training programs in there as much as my you want to call it corporate duties. But I know that if you skimp out on training, everything else long term fails. It might take a few years, but it fails.
Absolutely, and it's an investment that sometimes is not easy for an organization to make. No, with the pressures that they have to deal with.
The top brass see it as soft, but it's got to be a good percentage of revenue or turnover, or the cost structure has got to be put in there. But Brian, if we just turn to your business DNA discovery that you did, and just for our listeners, this is a online exercise that the participant takes for 10 to 12 minutes, answering some questions, forced choice questions, and out pops very accurate measurement of their natural behavioral style, their strengths and struggles. So Brian, when you did yours and you came out as an influencer, I'm just telegraphing that for our audience, what did it, what was it speaking to you, and how have you seen your business DNA style show up in the work you're doing at DHS, and probably in the past as well?
Yeah, it was spot on. It accounts for and makes sense, I think, and brings context to who I am and the weaknesses I have, as well as my strengths. And it, when I looked at my colleagues and my counterparts, it made a lot of sense with them too. And it really also it made clear how perhaps I wasn't optimizing how our different personalities could perhaps interact in a more productive way. I have a couple of people who work close with me who are really introspective and need time to process. Yeah. Which is the opposite of me. And so I've been learning to not necessarily expect answers right at that meeting, or right at the juncture that I would want to make a decision. And it's helped me to be more patient, because I want to leverage that introspection, because I know if those people have some time to kind of stew on it, they're really going to come out with some good stuff that will make us better. So that is a big takeaway, in that even though our strengths and weaknesses are very different, there are ways to optimize what we all have to offer, which goes right back to my philosophy that I think I've done instinctively is, okay, I'm weak here. I'm not gonna hide it. I'm going to be honest about it so that I can leverage other people's strengths so we can all succeed.
Yeah, I think that's important from a leadership perspective. You know, I always said to many others that the holy grail of leadership is being able to manage differences. And the report lays it out. You now know more about your style and where you're different to everybody else, and you can flex that to bring out the best in them. But how do you, Brian, with your style, you know, a couple of things are very noticeable is you're extremely goal-driven and competitive, so you like to win, and which probably is the attorney also shows up in being a prosecutor, because I don't know any prosecutor that doesn't want to win. And then secondly, also just being a lot more anchored, you know, process-driven, experience-based. How does that show up in the work you're doing in terms of driving processes?
I think probably, you know, the winning part is a little less discernible in this particular mission. You know, there's no bad guys to put in jail. There's no, even in border security, there's no, you know, tracking down, you know, a cartel, you know, a cartel member or breaking up some kind of, you know, smuggling ring. There's none of that. And so the successes are measured differently, and they're less distinctive or discernible. So that part, although, you know, kind of is not quite where I've been in the past, it is the relational part, and the leveraging and encouraging and motivating other people's success. We still have very clear goals, and they're very, very lofty goals, overcoming, you know, decades, in some cases, 100 years of you know, different cultures. And so where we can succeed is definitely going to have to be done through others. And so, and they're measured differently, and they're not quite as clear as, you know, conviction and jail time, right? Or winning a battle. But the relational part is still very strong. You know, the opportunity to work with people, opportunity to highlight their strengths, to unleash their strengths, still is there. And that's where I derive a lot of the satisfaction. And because of the loftiness of the goal, even though it's not as discernible in terms of wins and losses, the loftiness of it to me is very motivating, because this can have an impact and a legacy that will, you know, transcend, you know, my ever being remembered, you know?
Yeah, I think that's where in a bigger sense, the win comes up. The desire to make that happen, as opposed to more of a transactional win that you might have in a courtroom, or making a sale. You organizationally want to see DHS succeed in making America safer. But just going back to processes and procedures, do you push that line that everybody's got to have clarity in terms of the processes? They've got to be clear. Are you part of orchestrating that there's consistent processes, say, across the 22 areas of DHS? Is that part of how you do it? I'm just trying, because I know that part's a strong part of your profile, so I'm just interested in where that shows up as against the relationship side.
So internally to the Intelligence Training Division, which, you know, formerly known as a Training Optimization Initiative, we have definitely overhauled the way we do business. And the reason I'm a big believer in processes and procedures is I think the more you reduce friction, the more you can leverage creativity and free people up to advance because of that creativity and development of new ideas and new approaches, because the processes and the procedures make the predictable things easier to accomplish in less time without the friction, or with a lot less friction. If you're recreating the wheel every time a problem set comes your way, from my standpoint, that creates an environment where you're spending more time dealing with aggravated ankle biters and less time moving forward on the big strategic efforts. So we have definitely either created or overhauled a lot of processes. Within my organization is the Intelligence Training Academy, which they used to operate independently. So although we oversee them and they're the ones that have the classes and do the instruction, I have been more interested, as long as they are passing their assessments and their requirements from the external quality control entities. As long as they're doing that, I have been more focused on enabling them to succeed, both at the level that I'm overseeing that optimization effort across the department, but also in the actual classes that they teach, the throughput that they have, and making sure they have the ability, with one of the things that we've been able to succeed at, for instance, is with COVID, we actually increased the number of people we trained, which in the intelligence community, that would have been thought of as impossible because so much training has to be done in a secured setting. But what we were able to do is anything that wasn't secure, we have adapted to virtual training at a level no other intelligence organization that we know of in the entire U.S. intelligence community has been able to do. And even if you look at the agencies within DHS, we've led the way there, where we have actually increased the numbers of people we train during COVID. Now, there's still, there's a backlog in terms of classified training, but in terms of the unclassified, we've maximized our ability to do that. So we did that by freeing people up to be creative and to look for solutions. And that was successful. And I think part of the reason that succeeded was because the processes and the procedures were already either established or fine-tuned to free people up to develop and to troubleshoot.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that you're able to do that. But I suppose a lot of focus enables you to do it. And I think something you said before in terms of reducing friction is being important, because I've always said that clarity creates trust. And if you're going to motivate a lot of people, that's something that's really important. But Brian, if we take all that and just sort of wrap this up with, your identity, how do you want to be seen by your team? What's your identity with the team and the people that you're leading in DHS?
I think for me, it's important that I be seen as a great example, or even the epitome of a servant leader. That when when the going gets tough, I'm practicing what I preach, which is we look out for the guy or the woman on our left and right, and that mission is best accomplished by being a servant leader and by not putting yourself first. When I headed up the Border Security Division, when I first took over as the division director, I read them Rudyard Kipling's poem "If," and part of that is and then the other poem I read them was the one that referred to the strength of the wolf is the pack and the strength of the pack is the wolf. And they embraced that. They ended up calling themselves the wolf pack. Many of these people, were academics, never involved in sports, yet they embraced that to the extent that one time I was walking past the cubes and one of my analysts, who had never been an athlete, was in a heated discussion with a CIA counterpart on a bottom line regarding drug cartels. And it got pretty heated. And then she slammed down the phone and said, that'll teach her to mess with a she bitch from the wolf pack. And that kind of pride, I just felt really good about it because she had taken a pride in our organization. And, CIA, much more renowned, much more used to throwing their weight around. And yet I had someone who was confident in her analytic bottom line and took pride in being part of this wolf pack that they had ended up calling our division.
But do you think, does that, I think that resonates a lot in terms of being a champion of, building wolf pack teams.
Right. It's, we talked about what a wolf pack is when they embraced that. We talked about that, and we talked about how, and I've used this analogy with my when I coach youth football as well. When they take down prey, one wolf is not able to take down a moose, for instance, but they are very methodical about one taking the hindquarters and one taking the neck, and they work together in an integrated fashion, and they're looking out for each other in an integrated fashion. And so that's what I hope to personify to them, I didn't just preach it because it's easy to say a lot of great things philosophically, but that I lived it and exemplified it. That's what I hope to do. And I'm not perfect, so sometimes I don't succeed.
No, but I think that, being a builder of Wolfpack teams really fits with your identity from everything I've heard today. When you talk about, being the champion of good, combating evil, being a protector, taking things head on, as you would have done in law, getting people to integrate together as a team. There's a pathway there that builds you into that, and really you're all about the team, not the individual. And so, being the builder of Wolfpack teams is you from everything that I heard today.
Yeah, and I think it's tremendously satisfying in the heart, as and as well as the mind. I'm going out a little bit on a limb here, but I'm a single dad of 5 kids. So the ex left about 7 years ago. It was for different reasons. She left and essentially is out of the picture. She lives 2.5 hours away. So all of a sudden I'm a single dad of 5 kids. So I'm a pretty intense person. I experienced that very intensely, lost 25 pounds in the first month. Clearly was dealing with situational depression, but still was leading Border Security Division, still leading the Wolf Pack, and still responsible for them and an important mission. My admin assistant just shook her head and she said, "Brian, you're literally wasting away before my eyes." But, I faked it to make it. I was doing everything I could to put on a good face when I was in front of the troops. Sometimes I'd close the office door and lay face down on the floor for 10 minutes and then get back up and continue to work. But it was one of the, I've been in combat, but this was one of the toughest things I've ever been through. And it was one of the things I discovered is I was definitely not operating at high proficiency for me. My people started rallying around where they literally were writing up the talking points for a meeting, handing it to me, and like getting me to the meeting. And I was pulling it off. I had enough wherewithal to pull it off. And that was a pretty dark time. Like I experienced it intensely, so it went fast. Within a couple of months, I came out of it. I came out of the dark cloud or the cave. But so that's the upside of being an intense person, is you can process through things quickly. But I went down hard, and the wolf pack, instead of me leading the wolf pack was behind me, pushing me into the meeting, almost literally. And that was very rewarding in a way, even though it was very humbling, obviously, because it goes both ways. And it really drove home that we were looking out for each other.
Because the wolf pack protected you, and I'm sure you've done the same at home with your 5 kids as well, and you've got a wolf pack there as well, and everybody's stuck together and you make it all work, even though obviously it's a very difficult, tragic situation. Sounds like you've turned the corner there and made it all work too. So yeah,
they look out for each other. They're pretty it's pretty well known in the community that those 5 look out for each other. So I don't think they would ever have the relationships they have with each other, nor the relationships that I have with them would be the same. So from everything, every tragedy or every bad turn, I think there's always blessings, potential blessings. So that's what I think we got out of that.
I think that's how you have to look at life. And that might be, even though I was going to ask you sort of for a closing message, I think actually that might be a good message just to end this on.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Brian. I've really enjoyed spending time with you, and you've got an amazing life and career history there. And I'm glad so many people in our country get to benefit from it, and to know that you're developing the people that keep us safe is fantastic. So thank you, Brian.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about things I love, and you did a great job getting it out of me. Not that
well, there's a book there about what wolf packs.